You're watching another episode of Light and Darkness. Today we'll address the fifth out of the 5 spiritual senses that we've gone through during this mini-series, and today we'll talk about the sense of touch, and we will compare the self-imposed versus God-ordained sense of touch, and in particular the self-imposed versus God-ordained fire. And I'll get into that a little bit here in a few minutes. But when we talk about touch in the physical aspect, we touch something, it can have a rough shell or a rough surface or a smooth surface. It can have a hot surface or a cold surface. It can have a hard surface or a soft surface or a combination. And there are many different combinations of the types of touch that we have the ability to feel with our physical attributes or our physical tools of measurement. But God-ordained sense of touch is much different, and I'd like to focus. There are various angles in which to look at this, but one angle is when we enjoy, or when we choose, I wouldn't say enjoy, when we choose to touch things that burn us or that may not be good to touch. I don't think the average person would go and want to touch a bumblebee, let's say, or something that's going to bite them, or put their hand inside the mouth of a large animal because that animal may bite them, right? But we choose sometimes in life to touch things out of curiosity, out of boredom, out of pressure, out of risk, out of the thrill, out of different drivers that can drive the types of decisions that we make. But here with our brief time, I want to focus on God-ordained touch or God-ordained fire. And I want us to look at the story, the fiery trial, and the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where King Nebuchadnezzar threw them into the fire. And some of you may know the story, some of you may not know the story, but once they were thrown into the fire for their faith and for standing for their faith, they were, of course, brought out unharmed. And we saw that the only thing that was touched by that fire were the shackles, and those were burnt and removed from their arms. But another interesting point is that King Nebuchadnezzar, if we look at some of the biblical films that reflect and portray the story, is that King Nebuchadnezzar, he was out of his disbelief. He put his finger, one of his fingers, put part of his hand into the fire to confirm that it was a real fire, because he not only saw these 3 men being unharmed by this fire, but he also saw a 4th, and that was Jesus, and he was protecting them. But King Nebuchadnezzar, even after he saw that, he still wanted to test because of the limitations of his physical mind. He couldn't comprehend what was happening spiritually. So he put part of his hand, or he put his finger, and his hand just blew up. Why? Because you put your finger in the fire and it's going to burn, right? It's going to cause some sort of a damage to the flesh. And so the message here, the moral here is that if we touch things, or if we have a curiosity to touch things that are not ordained by God, that do not have the hand of God on it, it may look tempting. It may look out of disbelief. Well, let me just try this. You try and then you fail, or you try and then you succeed. But even after sometimes succeeding, or even after failing, when Nebuchadnezzar put his hand in the fire, he got burned. And so the story here, or the moral here, is there's a difference between being in a fire or being part of a fire that is ordained by God versus self-ordained or self-imposed. When it's self-imposed, it's always going to burn us. But that burning is not going to purify us necessarily or bring us out as pure gold, as the Bible teaches, but instead it will burn us and cause us to crumble or cause us to become weaker than we already are. But if it's ordained by God, then even if we walk through fire, even if we're thrown into the flames, even if we're standing in the midst of a fiery trial, God will surround us, and God will not allow one flame to touch us. But even if they do touch us, He won't allow that flame to harm us. And so the question for all of us is, what do we have a taste to touch? What do we desire to touch? What are the things that we want to go after and touch? And going back to the story of Joseph, because Joseph honored God, because Joseph put God number one in his life, whatever Joseph touched, God made it prosper. So fire can be good and fire can be bad. It can burn us and it can also bless us. And God, he created a type of fire within Joseph and through Joseph to not only bless his leader, Pharaoh, but also to bless the entire land of Egypt, which was one of the most, if not the most powerful nation of that time. But why? Because Joseph, he acquired a taste to touch only what was pure in the sight of God. And because of that, God created a fire, or God allowed Joseph to create a fire, a heavenly fire, a holy fire that blessed the nation. On the flip side, we look at King Nebuchadnezzar, who with testing the power of God through his own fragility, put a finger in the fire that he himself threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in, and the moment he touched his finger, it blew up in flames, or it became swollen and it burned him. So the question for all of us today is, what do we seek after touching, number one? And two, do we understand the difference between the physical touch and the spiritual touch? And number three, for really, I'd like to end it, is, are we sad if we have not yet tapped into this spiritual sense of touch? The question is this: are we satisfied with what we're touching in the physical realm? What I mean by touching, what we are investing our time in, what we find valuable, what we chase after, what we wake up thinking about, what we go about our day thinking about, what we put our head on the pillow at night thinking about, those types of things. What are we satisfied with it? Does it satisfy us 100%? And if we're honest with ourselves and we say, you know what, it does satisfy me, then that's fine. The level of awareness for each person is different. It's customizable and customize each person on an individual level. But for those who are watching and say, you know what, what I have really chased after in the physical realm, or what I've touched, and whether it's prospered or whether it's failed, it's still not satisfying, or it's still not fulfilling, or it just leaves me wanting to chase more, then for those people who are watching, it will be an interesting step to take for you individually to say, you know what, let me try this, because obviously I've tried this and I've tried this, and oh, Summer, you don't know I've tried this and I've tried this, but you know what, I'm going to take one step of faith. You've created a curiosity in me, and this curiosity will lead God to pay attention to you, and only you, and for you, and he'll work through you to allow new things that you touch to prosper, that will create a new satisfaction within you, create a new flow of blessings, not for only you, but through you and for many people, whether it's your family, or whether it's your businesses, or whether it's your friends, or whatever is in your future that God has for you. But it's that curiosity, that's the first step that it takes for God to ignite his spirit in you, and the first step that it takes for God to say, you know what, this person is different, you know what, this person has hit the mute button on the world for just a split second, and because of that, I'm going to honor it, and I'm going to show them how to create a new sense of spiritual touch that I will allow to grow and to flourish in that individual's life. Thanks again for joining me here on Light and Darkness. Today we've concluded the 5-part series on the 5 spiritual senses.